What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Knights of the Walking Dead.
Yeah,
yes. Woo! A new episode just aired last Sunday. I know it's a little late coming at you, but it's midweek, and I know you're itching for some Walking Dead, so we're bringing it to you. Yep. This is our review on the previous episode called Slabtown. So Nathan, let's start immediately with you. And what were your thoughts on this episode? Initial thoughts.
Well, my initial thoughts was it's a big change of pace here. We're going from boom boom to let me try to figure out what the hell is going on. You really had to put your mind into every scene and every little thing to really figure out what Beth is dealing with.
True. Robert actually commented a little bit on that. Now, would you care to elaborate with what Nathan was saying? You had to concentrate on every little thing shown.
Yes. Because it was a big change of pace, but this is also, you got to remember, we're covering Beth's story here. Beth's been gone for a pretty long and substantial amount of time, especially if you want to just think back with everything that's taken place. And you can just use Daryl as a reference point. Basically, everything Daryl's been through since him and Beth have been gone, so you got to account for all that. So every single scene and every single piece of dialogue that was inserted into the episode, you really had to pay attention to because it was supposed to cover a large amount of time and to really show you everything about who and what Beth was and who she was dealing with, pretty much.
This is very true. Now, Steven, would you like to talk about the pacing of the show? Nathan said how it was going from a whoa, train is coming at you.
It's like a rush of destruction.
Let's focus on Beth only. All it did was focus on Beth's side of the story. So, I mean, what did you think of that? Like the pacing of that?
The pacing was a huge change up. I mean, you go from bang bang, people getting shot, zombie blood guts everywhere to, hey, I'm in a hospital. What's going on?
Right.
But I like what they did with the episode because it was extremely story driven. It filled you in. It gave you lots of bits of information that you wanted to know what happened in her time frame, and that's what I liked about it. But it was just slow, and you weren't used to that after the first 3 episodes. Yeah. So it was kind of like,
it definitely crammed a lot of story elements into it, but only to pretty much explain kind of Beth's story. I never really kind of connected with it. I never cared too much about it. I didn't really care. I just wanted to get back to Rick, to be honest, or Daryl. I wanted to get back to the scene where Daryl says, "Come on out." And this episode didn't do that at all. It didn't even. It built it up so as if to say, "Okay, we're going to come back and revisit this."
Yeah, I was kind of expecting it to transfer into that at the end of the episode where he's like, and boom, Noah comes out of the bushes.
Yeah, exactly.
And we already know next week's episode is going to focus on Sergeant Abraham and his group.
Yeah.
And then if you want to just try to jump ahead to what they could do for the week after that, it's probably going to have to be either a flashback scene showing what happened to Carol and how Noah could possibly end up with Daryl, or they're going to touch back on Rick's group and what they're doing.
Exactly.
I also thought this showed you that Beth is kind of a badass.
Yeah,
because she had to handle a lot going on there.
Yeah. She surprised a lot of people, and I think that was another big part, was to show you, she's on her own. She's by herself essentially. Yeah, she's with people, but what's the big motto of The Walking Dead? It's fight the dead, fear the living, and she was taking charge and making sure that the living weren't going to get to her.
Yeah,
so
that's very true. I mean, anything about this episode that really stood out for you guys? I don't know. For me, it really wasn't anything that stood out for me. I don't know. Maybe you guys can care to share something. Anything.
I mean, you can kind of touch on, well, who were these people that were at this hospital? It came off like they were pretty nice. Sort of.
Oh yeah,
they were there to help.
A lot of deceiving and psychological aspect to this episode for sure.
A lot of deception, and it starts to make you think. Well, okay, how bad can these people really be? And you started to find out, that there are things such as rape that were partaking at a very frequent, and it was a very frequent thing at the prison, or not the prison, in this hospital to happen. You learn about Noah's father and how they have no problem just offing somebody if they know they can't take care of him.
What did they tell him? They could only take one of the two, and he clearly found out later that they could obviously take 2 of them, but they
Yeah.
didn't want the person that could fight back because his dad was like a big, strong dude.
And we saw that with the doctor. I guess if something that stood out for me, I mean the doctor seemed like the good guy for most of the episode, and he kind of gave you that vibe. Okay, he's gonna be the guy that helps Beth out, you know, and then turns around, sets Beth up, just for his own benefit. So that was kind of a standout. But once again, it kind of brings me back to that these characters that they brought in, they had to cram so much into it because of the time lapse that happened. And they crammed so much into it, and they're trying to make you care about these characters. But I just didn't
Well,
care.
you kind of know that after maybe 1 or 2 episodes, you're not going to see him again,
Yeah.
most likely.
I mean, unless if they're... I mean, I guess Noah is a huge... I guess Noah's the huge part of this show. I mean, like,
he could be the
gonna
catalyst.
Yes.
He could be the catalyst for what pushes Rick and his group to now follow
to Richmond.
Yeah, Richmond, possibly towards where Sergeant Abraham, you know, because who knows what's going to happen. They have already shown next week there could be some run-ins on the road, and their direction could go into another way, and they could take them somewhere else.
And if you're a fan of The Walking Dead, you know that Richmond leads to some pretty big baddies. Like, if you know anything about that,
Very possible.
The universe of Walking Dead, I mean, it leads to some pretty big baddies, and that's Negan, am I correct?
Yeah, it's the villain.
Yeah,
the villain who...
And he's worse than the governor.
Yeah.
So Noah could be the catalyst that brings them to Richmond, to a safe area there, just before they get to Washington, D.C. So maybe one day we'll get to Washington. Nathan?
Is there anything in this episode that maybe somebody else didn't notice? Isn't there something that you... Oh, the scene where 2 people are coming out of the room. I didn't catch that, and probably a lot of viewers didn't catch that either.
I actually it was discussing the whole when the officer, I'm sorry, what was the officer's name? Dawn, when she was sort of explaining to Beth what her role was going to be at the hospital. You started really connecting some dots and putting the puzzle pieces together as to what they were talking about, and especially by the way Gordon, sorry, by the way Gordon was acting, it was pretty obvious out there. And if you didn't notice it earlier, it actually showed it pretty subtly when Beth was walking down the hall and you saw the officer exit one of the rooms. And once she looks into one of the rooms, you saw it was a young girl in there, and she quickly just closed the door. That was also the same girl who later tried to run away, and they had to cut her arm off.
Name's Joan, which is irrelevant because she obviously
is
Walker,
but it shows you
name's Walker
how
now.
far these people are willing to go. And then another big thing was the fact that Carol. What happened to Carol to get her into this hospital? We already know they just straight up kidnapped Beth, and apparently they possibly even hurt her intentionally, just so they could say they helped her.
Yeah, because she doesn't remember anything.
And I'm going off just what they've released for set photos. It's sort of alluded to what's going to happen to Carol, but it kind of is going to show you a different side of who these people are and what their real purpose may be.
See, but the thing is there a higher power than Dawn, or is Dawn the higher power? Because it seemed like they were hinting to it. They kept saying they. But is it there's someone above Dawn?
They kept thinking they're coming.
Yeah.
As in like the higher up people who are going to save them, which obviously that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Right.
So
They're probably talking about somebody to rescue them, or like to probably
we're going to help them.
That's her just hoping.
Yeah. That's her just hoping.
What an idiot.
What an idiot.
Literally.
Well, so do we think Rick and crew are going to come back and get Beth out of...
100%.
100%.
My opinion. I think... I even was discussing this with my brother, and I told him, give it 3 episodes, you're going to get an assault on the hospital.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems so, I don't know, redundant at this point. I mean, all right, let's go back, and we got to save, Beth now, and then everything
let's go
is
here,
just...
kill these guys.
Yeah,
these are
okay.
bad people. Let's kill them too. Like, When are we human?
Well, do we
We're just
think-
go around slaughtering
Yeah,
people.
it's becoming like that. It's really holding the story back. I really liked it when DC, but I mean, yeah, we'll probably get a rescue mission. But the way
Maybe.
Carol is, I'm sure it'll just be Carol by herself. You know, go in there like Rambo, boom. You know, get her out.
I think a sacrificing
What?
episode.
She's like the MacGyver of the show.
Yeah, she's the
I'm,
MacGyver.
I'm
Fireworks.
sensing actually a self-sacrifice coming up here. That's what I
She's
think.
gonna give herself up.
I
Robert is not a certified psychic.
I am not, but I'm feeling.
You will read your
I'm
cards.
getting
I'm
these
getting
powers.
Tingling
I'm
feeling.
just feeling. You know, we lost Bob, and Bob was obviously killed. You know, by the enemy at the
So
time.
it's gonna
We
be
got Noah.
Noah
Oh,
is
is that-
the self-sacrifice. Because there's another black guy that can go on the show.
They need Noah. They need Noah. So.
Until the other black guy comes around.
and
So
I-
Noah might be the self-sacrifice.
And personally, I just think it makes sense for it to be Carol because we have fallen in love with her this season. You can't take an episode that you haven't wanted to go high five for Carol.
High five for Carol.
High five for
And
Carol.
it was like the complete opposite when the series started. We were like, who cared about Carol?
and I think, you know, if you follow the comics, Carol's been gone. So her character right now has been walking on just an invisible path. So at any moment they could just, you know, sweep the rug out from under her, and I think that's what they're coming up to. So
Carol's definitely had to do some of the roughest things, I think,
Yeah.
in the past season.
yep, killing kids.
And
Kill
she'll probably,
kids.
The child killer.
So if it's going along the lines of Robert's prediction, self-sacrifice, she'll
It's-
feel like, you know what, it's time.
I've done my
You know,
deed.
I've done my done my part.
Mm-hmm.
So back to this episode here. We can go ahead and start our. Unless there's anything else you guys want to chime in, we can start our reviews.
I think we covered most parts. It was pretty good.
Yeah.
Good on that.
Pretty good. Pretty good.
I
on what
still
we
give
got.
Beth mad props for tricking that guy into getting bit by the revenge.
Oh
walker.
yeah, that was cool. Yeah.
Because it's so easy to fool a horny guy.
Yeah.
the
It's already
revenge.
covered that Beth is like a cutter. Is that
was-
covered in the
was in
the
season-
funeral one?
That was
where
like
they're in
the
funeral
second
home?
Season 2. That was in season
Okay.
2 when she just thought about
She was gonna
suicide.
kill-
Oh,
yeah.
That was
that's
one of
right.
the hints to season 2, along with the viewing of the city of Atlanta.
Mhm.
You know, you got to see what it looked like after the bombing because that was literally the last time you saw the city.
I did think it was really neat when they were sitting on the roof and you had the city just
Yep.
decimated in the backdrop.
There was one thing that I wanted to talk about on this episode. It doesn't have anything to do with this episode, but it has something to do with back in season 2. I'm pretty sure you guys might have seen this on Facebook or something. But referring to Negan's group, a possibility of it being Negan's group.
Oh,
Back in season
Randall.
2,
Was it Randall?
Randall, when Shane killed Randall, but Randall said that he had a group of soldiers, like hundreds, you know. So maybe that was hinting towards, and also that gang that was in that bar was not very friendly. So
No.
that kind of hints towards it a little bit. So wouldn't it be cool that if in season 2 they were hinting at this all along? You know, like this was, the army from Negan's army, and Randall was actually, that guy from that army, and then Shane killed him. But I mean,
That was the one he like killed in the woods and said that.
you said Walker's got him.
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, Shane.
That was pretty
Typical Shane stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. One day someone else did it, and he
Yeah.
went that way.
Yeah, he went that way.
That's when Shane.
All right, so Steven, start me off with your review, man, of this episode.
I do like the fact that we got filled in on what Beth was. The pacing just kind of threw everything off, though, just because you go from high octane action type stuff to slow, pretty much a screeching halt,
Mm-hmm.
basically. But
Ballroom Blitz to Ballroom Dance.
It's a ballroom blitz, so.
I'm gonna give it a 7 based on the fact
Wow.
that it fills a lot of backstory. I did like the backstory part. I do like knowing what happened to Beth and how she ended up where she ended up. I thought it was good from that standpoint.
All right, 7 out of 10 for Steven. Robert.
All right. Well, obviously, I'm talking about the pace here a little bit. For some people here who are actually complaining about, wow, The Walking Dead's moving pretty fast here. I'm pretty surprised we're getting a lot of complaints over the slowing down of the pace.
Too slow, too quick.
But just taking into account the time lapse that had to take place, the so-called weeks, possibly even a month of time that Beth has been at this hospital, all the backstory you finally got to get about her, where she's been, all these new characters, and learning just little bits and pieces about them. You know, Dawn, did she possibly have to kill her husband, who was the former man in charge? This doctor is clearly someone who's walking on thin ice. Noah could possibly be a character that's going to lead them further into the story for new characters. And so now you kind of got this whole introduction of possibly new villains this time around, because, as I was possibly saying, they could attack this hospital later in the future. So I do believe this is was a big episode, and I do believe you got a lot of strong performances, and you got a lot of in-depth stuff that took place. So because of that, and also I like the fact that it did end with you got to see Carol come in there, so almost immediately your heart rate probably went. You were like, so you knew
that's Carol.
So they're going right back at it. You know, this was just a minor shift.
They just downshifted.
That's all they had to do. They had to take a turn. That's all. They just had to take that first turn. They had to downshift, and they're going at it again. But I'm still giving it an 8 out of 10.
There you go.
Yeah, that's
Wow.
8 out of 10 for Robert Nathan.
Well, that's long.
That's a generous 8.
I'm good. What can I say?
It had the story, but it really wasn't enveloping. It didn't grab me at the soul, you know, with everything that went on, like last season with, you know, Carol and the whole, you know, killing the kids, the Grove. That episode was like heart gripping. You know, it had a lot of backstory. This one
Target on these
was it was loose. It was loose on the soul. So I'm gonna give it a 6.
A 6.
That's it.
6 out of 10 for Nathan.
Really? I did that whole explanation.
Well, I'm kind of gonna go with Nathan on this one. For me, it was after a very speedy start to Walking Dead, super fast season 5. You know what I mean? And that's the problem with the way they did that. Now they set a standard, and they really pushed it way back for this episode. And Beth, what?
Nothing. I'm sorry.
I mean, the story with Beth, I didn't really get into it as much as I should have been, and I know they were trying to get you to, comprehend these characters within a short amount of time, but I just didn't, get into it. And a finality to this episode would have been really good if they ended it with Daryl coming out of the woods and let's get back onto DC, the track to DC. I'm not too fond of this episode. I'm going to give it a 5.5 out of 10. And, I mean, I couldn't give it a 6 because I felt like that was being too generous. So, 5.5 out of 10 for me. So, what was yours?
The average.
7?
I just did the average.
8 and a 6.
Yeah, the average is going to be a 6.
A 6 out of 10 for this episode? That sounds about
See,
right.
you could have went with a 5. Then it would have been 5, 6, 7, 8. I
think
it would have got a lot better score if they just progressed the story like an episode's worth more. Like they get out of the hospital and that's it.
That's
because dragging this along it's really pointless.
Perfectly said.
Because those characters are not going to be there 2 episodes from now.
And both of you two were complaining about how fast the plot
was.
Both of you did.
Now, see
they
I never,
wanted to be.
We could talk about this later.
Never complained on how fast the story was moving. In fact, I gave it 9 out of 10s pretty much this entire season. That's how awesome it's been that they've been moving the story forward. That's the problem is they didn't do anything to move the story forward today. Last Sunday, they just winded it way back, and they're going to just explain Beth's story, which seems to be like an ongoing thing since they didn't fill it up, sum it up in one episode. Now it's going to be over time, so now there's going to be filler episodes to kind of get things back to,
There's always filler episodes.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the problem. I mean, they started it off with rapid fire story elements. Let's go to DC. I'm on board, dude. I'm super excited about it. And now they just...
So you wanted Beth first.
I was kind of falling asleep a little bit during this episode. And my mom says she's going to give it a generous 7 out of 10. She says they brought in more people and more storylines. It was mysterious. And that it left with a cliffhanger. So that would be my mom's review, a 7 out of 10. But anyways,
I'm super anxious to see what happens with Carol though. Like,
yeah, that was probably
that was the 0.5.
That was the 0.5. There you go. Yeah. That justified my 0.5.
Nice.
All right, well, there you go. That has been the Knights of the Walking Dead. Thank you so much for watching.
Yay!
Clap it out. Clap it out.
Thank
Clap
you.
it out. Clap it out. Clippity cloppity. Clippity cloppity.
And bring it back in. What's up, everybody? And